The twin suns of Aurelia shone over the grand palace of the Zinari Empire. The towers were made of silver glass that reached high into the clouds. Below them, banners of gold and blue moved in the warm wind. Inside the main hall, the Empress of Zinari sat on her high seat, calm and proud. Her name was Lysera Val, and she ruled more than 100 star systems. Every noble and commander bowed before her, for she was the strongest leader the Zinari had known in centuries. On this day, she was meeting an unusual visitor. The guards at the door whispered to each other as they looked at the guest who entered the hall. He was not tall or shining like the other races that came to the empire. He wore no armor of gold, no cape of rank. He was just a man in a plain dark suit, carrying a small device in his hands. His name was Ethan Cole, a human from the small blue planet called Earth. Humans had joined the galactic community only a few years ago. Many races called them primitive. They said humans were too young to understand the great powers that ruled the stars. Yet humans built ships that could travel fast, and their technology was strange, simple, but effective. Some admired them, but most of the nobles of Aurelia did not. When Ethan stepped forward and bowed, some guards smirked. One whispered, "Does this small creature think he can help us?" Another said softly, "Perhaps he came to fix the palace pipes." They laughed under their breath. Lysera did not join their laughter. She watched the human carefully. "You are the engineer from Earth," she said in a clear voice. "You say you have something to offer my empire?" Ethan nodded. His voice was calm. "Yes, Your Majesty. A shield system designed by humans. It reacts faster than most energy barriers and uses less power. It could protect your soldiers and even this palace." The Empress tilted her head. "Our shields are already the best in the Empire. Why would we need yours?" "Because ours can think," Ethan replied. "It learns from each hit. Every time an enemy attacks, the shield becomes stronger." The nobles round the hall exchanged doubtful looks. One of them, Lord Vekran, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is foolish. Humans exaggerate their skills. Their world is barely out of its infancy. Why should we trust them?" Ethan did not argue. He only placed his small device on the floor and pressed a button. A blue light spread around him, forming a smooth, transparent field. He picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at the barrier. The stone bounced back with a flash. Then he threw another. This time, the shield reacted faster, bending to absorb the impact. The crowd murmured. Lysera leaned forward. She had seen thousands of technologies, but this one behaved as if it were alive. She gave a small nod. "Interesting," she said. "Perhaps your world hides more than we thought." The meeting continued for another hour. The Empress asked questions about the device, and Ethan answered each one with patience. He spoke with quiet confidence, not pride. Lysera noticed that even when the nobles interrupted or mocked him, he never raised his voice. He only smiled and continued when the meeting ended. Lysera allowed him to stay in the palace for a few days. She said she wanted to test the shield herself. The guards did not like this decision, but they could not disobey her command. That evening, the palace glowed with soft light as the twin suns set. The great courtyard was filled with guests from across the galaxy. Music played, and the air smelled of the sweet Varelian flowers. The Empress stood among her guests, wearing silver robes that reflected the starlight. Ethan stood at the edge of the courtyard, silent, watching the stars above. He felt out of place among all the shining aliens. Then the sound of music stopped. A sudden vibration shook the ground. The lights flickered. A moment later, a sharp explosion echoed from the outer walls. The air filled with dust and screams. The guards looked around in confusion. "What was that?" One shouted. Another said, "Under attack." Before running toward the gate, from the shadows near the gardens, dark figures appeared. They wore black armor and masks that glowed red. Plasma fire cut through the night. Guests screamed and ran in every direction. Lysera froze for a moment as her guards shouted orders. But then she realized something terrible. Most of them were not protecting her. They were running away. The Empress stood alone at the center of the chaos. Ethan saw her standing still, surrounded by burning light. He did not think twice. He rushed forward, grabbed a fallen guard's shield unit, and activated it. The The blue barrier sprang to life just as a plasma bolt shot toward the Empress. It struck the shield and flared bright, leaving Ethan unharmed behind it. Lysera's eyes widened. The human had placed himself between her and the assassins. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Keeping you alive," he said without looking back. He moved quickly, adjusting the shield's frequency with one hand while holding the Empress's arm with the other. More bolts flew from the shadows, each one louder than the last. The shield bent and shimmered, growing stronger with every hit. Ethan guided Lysera toward a marble pillar, keeping her behind him from a distance. Some nobles saw the scene. They could not believe their eyes. The Empress's guards, trained warriors of the Zinari Empire, were nowhere to be seen. But the human, the small, fragile creature they had mocked, stood tall in the center of the storm. Lysera tried to move forward, but Ethan stopped her gently. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was steady, but his breathing was heavy. One of the attackers fired a missile toward them. Ethan pressed the shield device to its limit. The barrier exploded in light, sending both of them to the ground. He quickly got up, ignoring the pain in his arm. He looked at the Empress, who was unharmed. Relief crossed his face. Reinforcements finally arrived, shouting commands and firing at the attackers. The assassins retreated into the night as fast as they had come. The courtyard was filled with smoke and the smell of burnt metal when silence returned. The Empress looked around at the ruins. Her golden banners were in ashes. Many of her soldiers were nowhere to be found. But beside her stood the human, covered in dust, still holding the shield unit that now flickered weakly in his hand. She stepped forward slowly. "You could have run," she said softly. "Why didn't you?" Ethan looked at her, his face calm despite the bruises. "Because you were unarmed," he said. And that's reason enough. For a moment, the Empress had no words. Around them, the surviving guards and nobles looked down in shame. The one they had laughed at had done what none of them could do. As the medics arrived, Lysera ordered them to treat the human first. The guards tried to protest, saying the Empress should go first, but she silenced them with a single glance. "He saved my life," she said firmly. "He will be treated as my honored guest." That night, the palace remained quiet. The stars above Varelia looked peaceful again, as if the chaos had never happened. Inside her chamber, the Empress stood by the window, thinking about the man who had shielded her without hesitation. No one in her empire had ever done such a thing for her. Not her soldiers, not her nobles, not even her closest advisors. A human, someone she had just met, had risked everything. Far below, in the guest quarters, Ethan lay awake, his body aching but his mind calm. He did not think of fame or reward. He only hoped the Empress was safe. That night, both of them wondered silently about the strange bond that had formed in the fire of battle. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning of a story that would change the Empire forever. Morning light spread through the silver towers of the Varelian palace. The damage from the attack had been cleared, but the smell of burnt stone still hung in the air. Soldiers worked silently to rebuild the courtyard, and the nobles whispered about what had happened the night before. Every whisper carried the same words: the human had saved the Empress. Inside the grand medical chamber, Ethan Cole sat on the edge of a crystal bed. His left arm was wrapped in a band of healing gel that glowed softly. A Zinari medic finished checking his pulse and stepped back. "You should rest, human," she said. "You took heavy shock damage. Most of our soldiers would not have survived." Ethan gave a small smile. "I have a strong heart," he replied quietly. "Humans recover fast." When the medic left, the door opened again, and the room grew silent. Empress Lysera entered, dressed not in her royal armor, but in a simple white robe. Her golden hair shimmered under the soft lights. The guards standing outside bowed deeply. She raised a hand and said, "Leave us." They obeyed without question. Ethan stood up quickly, trying to be respectful, but the Empress shook her head. "You are injured," she said. "Sit." She walked closer, her expression calm yet serious. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said after a moment. "You could have escaped, but instead you stood in front of me. You risked your life for someone you barely knew." Wide Ethan looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because where I come from, We protect those who can't protect themselves, he said. It doesn't matter if they are human or not. Lysera studied him quietly. That is rare in this galaxy, she said softly. Most beings act only to save their own lives. Ethan shrugged. Maybe humans are just built differently. We've learned that fear only wins if we let it. The Empress turned toward the window. The city below sparkled like stars reflected in glass. My guards ran, she said slowly. They were trained from childhood to die for their ruler. But they ran. Ethan said nothing. He knew her pride must have been deeply wounded. Lysera looked back at him. I have ordered a full investigation. The attackers were professionals. Someone inside the palace gave them access codes. There is a traitor among us. Ethan's voice was calm but firm. Then you need better protection. I can help with that. Let me study the palace security systems. I can make them stronger. The Empress frowned slightly. You are an engineer, not a soldier. Why would you take this risk again? He smiled faintly. Because I don't like unfinished work. Lysera thought for a long time before she nodded. Very well. You will serve as my personal defense advisor. My council will not like it, but they will obey. That afternoon, rumors spread through the palace. The human was now working directly for the Empress. The guards whispered angrily, saying he had bewitched her. The nobles scoffed, claiming the Empress was losing her judgment. But Lysera ignored them. Ethan walked through the palace halls with a small scanner in his hand, mapping out weak points in the shield network. He worked quietly, talking to no one. Some guards watched him with suspicion, but others began to respect his focus. When he entered the central control chamber, he saw the old chief of security, Captain Wren. Glaring at him, "You do not belong here, human," Wren said coldly. "This system is not for outsiders." Ethan looked at the console and replied calmly. "Your system failed last night. That means it needs help." Wren's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, but he could not deny the truth. For hours, Ethan studied the power lines and defense grids. He found errors the engineers had missed for years, small gaps that could be exploited. Using human design logic, he began improving them with simple but clever adjustments. When Lysera came to inspect the work, Ethan showed her the new design. "It's not beautiful," he said, "but it will hold even under a heavy attack." The Empress looked at the holographic map. "You humans like to keep things simple," she said. "Simple means reliable," Ethan answered. Lysera gave a small smile. "Perhaps our empire has forgotten that." As days passed, the palace grew stronger. The shield walls reacted faster, the alarm systems became more accurate, and the guards had new routes to protect the Empress. But not everyone was pleased. Lord Vekern, one of the high nobles, watched from afar with cold eyes. He had been trying for years to take control of the royal council. Now a human stood in his way. He met secretly with other nobles who shared his anger. "The Empress trusts him too much," Vekern said. "We must remind her where her loyalty should be." That night, Lysera and Ethan met in the war chamber to review the final security updates. The blue light from the holograms reflected across their faces. "You work too much," Lysera said softly. "Do humans never rest?" Ethan smiled. "Rest comes after the danger is gone." Lysera looked at him carefully. "You are strange, human. You do not ask for wealth or favor, yet you give more than anyone else here. What is it you truly want?" Ethan hesitated for a moment. "I want your people to understand that humans aren't weak. We might be small in number, but we stand when others run." The Empress nodded slowly. "Last night, I saw that truth with my own eyes." As they finished their discussion, the palace lights dimmed. Suddenly, alarms echoed across the halls. The guards shouted from outside, "Gas leak in the west wing. Everyone evacuate." Lysera frowned. That wing was cleared this morning. Ethan's instincts sharpened. "It's not a leak. Someone's trying again." He grabbed a respirator from the wall and handed it to her. The air began to shimmer faintly with green mist. He wrapped a cloth around his own face and led her toward the exit. The gas thickened, and the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Ethan could hear the sound of heavy boots. He pulled the Empress behind a pillar just as plasma shots hissed through the air. Assassins again. Without waiting, Ethan activated the emergency barrier he carried with him. The shield flared to life, protecting them from the blasts. He guided the Empress through the corridors, moving fast but silent. His movements were sharp and trained. When they reached the eastern corridor, more attackers appeared. Ethan turned on a small device, releasing a flash that blinded the enemies for a few seconds. He used the moment to pull Lysera through a hidden service passage he had discovered while studying the palace. They came out in the garden behind the main hall. The night was cold, and the air outside was clear. The Empress coughed, trying to breathe freely again. "Are you hurt?" Ethan asked. "No," she said, catching her breath. But they were inside the palace again. "How is this possible?" Ethan looked around, scanning the sky. "It means your traitor is still close." The palace guards finally arrived, shouting for the Empress. When they saw Ethan standing beside her, they froze. Their faces showed guilt. Lysera's eyes burned with anger. "You arrived too late again," she said coldly. "If not for this human, I would be dead." The guards bowed in shame, unable to meet her gaze. Later that night, in the royal meeting chamber, Lysera sat in silence as her council argued. Lord Vecran spoke loudly, trying to turn the moment to his advantage. "Your Majesty, this human is a curse upon the palace. Wherever he goes, danger follows." "Perhaps the attackers are his allies." Ethan said nothing. He stood quietly, his head lowered. Lysera looked at him for a long moment. She could see the calm in his eyes, not fear or guilt. Finally, she rose from her seat. "Enough," she said firmly. "If not for this man, I would be dead twice over. You will show him respect, or you will answer to me." The chamber fell silent. No one dared to speak again. After the meeting, Lysera found Ethan in the corridor. He was checking a small console for more flaws in the palace network. She stopped beside him and said softly, "You have changed the way I see your kind. When others run, humans stand firm." Ethan gave a quiet smile. "Courage is not rare, Your Majesty. Sometimes people just forget they have it." The Empress looked out at the night sky, the stars shining above the city. "Then perhaps my people need to be reminded," she said as she walked away. Ethan watched her in silence. He knew more danger would come, but he also knew something had changed inside her. The proud Empress of Varelia had begun to trust a human. And in a galaxy filled with fear and pride, that trust was the most powerful thing of all. The days after the second attack passed in tense silence. The palace looked calm from the outside, but under the shining towers, fear and suspicion spread through every corridor. Guards whispered about spies and traitors. Servants walked quickly, avoiding questions. Even the nobles spoke in low voices, careful not to draw attention. Empress Lysera felt the weight of her crown more than ever. She had ruled her empire with confidence for years, but now she trusted only one person. And that person was not from her world. Ethan Cole, the human engineer, continued his work improving the palace defenses. He spent long hours in the control rooms, checking every security line and testing every sensor. His human systems were simple but powerful. The Empress trusted his designs completely. Still, his presence caused unrest. Some nobles thought he had too much influence. They called him a commoner, an outsider, even a threat. The council chamber, once full of respectful voices, now echoed with anger and jealousy. Lord Vecran sat among them, his golden robe shining in the light of the council lamps. His eyes were sharp and cold. "This human walks freely through our palace," he said loudly. "He touches our systems, our shields, even our royal codes. Can you not see the danger? He might be the very one guiding the assassins." Several nobles nodded. One said, "The Empress has grown too close to him. It is unnatural. We must act before she forgets her duty to our people." Vecran smiled slightly. "Then we are agreed. We will expose him for what he truly is." That night, the halls were quiet. The Empress sat in her private chamber, a single lamp lighting her desk. Papers and holoscreens were scattered before her. She was reading reports of missing security codes. Someone had erased key data about the attacks. Only a person within the palace could have done it. She felt tired. Her guards no longer gave her comfort. Their silence felt like cowardice now. When a soft knock sounded at her door, she looked up. "Enter," she said. Ethan stepped in, holding a small data tablet. He bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, I have found something," he said. Lysera's expression sharpened. "What is it?" Ethan placed the tablet on the desk. The energy readings from both attacks matched the same pattern. The weapons used came from your own military stock. Whoever planned this has access to high command equipment. The Empress stared at the data. "That means one of my council members is responsible." Ethan nodded. "Most likely. The energy cores used are from a restricted arsenal under Lord Vecron's authority." Lysera frowned. "You are accusing one of my oldest advisors." "I am not accusing anyone yet," Ethan said calmly. "I am only showing what the numbers say." For a moment, Lysera was silent. Then she said, "You may be right. But if I confront him now without proof, he will turn the council against me." Ethan looked thoughtful. "Then we find proof before he finds a way to destroy it." That night, they worked together, tracing code lines through the palace network. The soft glow of the holoscreens lit their faces as the hours passed. Lysera watched how patient Ethan was. He never raised his voice, never rushed, and never looked afraid. At one point, she asked quietly, "Ethan, why do you trust me? You are surrounded by aliens. You could leave if you wanted." He smiled slightly. "Because you trusted me first," he said. "And trust means something where I come from." Lysera looked at him, her heart unsure how to answer. She turned her gaze back to the screen, pretending to study the data. When morning came, they had found what they needed. The hidden communication line that the assassins used led directly to a private code belonging to Lord Vecron. Lysera stood from her seat. "We will confront him today," she said. "This ends now." But as they prepared to leave the chamber, the door suddenly opened. Guards rushed in with weapons raised. "Ethan Cole," one shouted, "you are under arrest for treason against the crown." Lysera's eyes widened. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. Captain Wren stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, we receive reports that the human has been sending data to unknown frequencies. The council has ordered his arrest." Ethan looked at Lysera calmly. "Those signals are the shield calibrations I was testing," he said. Lysera's voice turned cold. "Who gave this order?" "Lord Vecron," Wren answered. "He claims the human is working with the assassins." Lysera felt fury rise inside her. She looked at Ethan. His face showed no fear. He said quietly, "It's all right, Your Majesty. I'll clear this up." Before she could stop them, the guards took him away. The council hall was crowded that afternoon. The nobles gathered in their bright robes, whispering to one another. The Empress sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. Ethan was brought in, his hands bound with energy cuffs. He stood tall, unafraid. Lord Vecron stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said loudly, "this human has betrayed us. We found messages sent to the same frequency as the assassins. He is not our savior. He is our spy." The crowd murmured in agreement. Lysera raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "You may speak for yourself, human," she said softly. Ethan looked at her, his voice calm and clear. "I did not betray you. The signals you found were part of the defense system test. I reported the details to the command logs every day. If someone erased them, it was not me." Vecron laughed. "How convenient. There is no proof of your innocence." Ethan turned toward him. "And there is no proof of my guilt either." Vecron sneered. "You dare speak against the council?" Ethan replied, "I speak the truth. You can hate humans all you want, but that doesn't change the facts." Lysera watched both men. Her heart told her Ethan was innocent, but the council's pressure was strong. If she defended him openly, she risked rebellion. Vecron stepped closer. "This man has played with your emotions, Your Majesty. He saved you to gain your trust, then used it to access our systems. You are blinded by his false loyalty." Lysera's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Vecron," she said. "You speak to your Empress." Vecron bowed slightly, but his tone stayed sharp. "Then act as one. Order his execution before he does more damage." Before she could respond, a loud sound echoed through the chamber. It was an explosion from deep within the palace. The floor trembled. Guards ran in shouting, "Attack! The palace is under attack again." Smoke filled the halls. Through the shattered windows, black-armored assassins appeared once more. The council scattered in panic. Lys Era stood frozen for a heartbeat, realizing that the timing was too perfect. The attack began just as Ethan was accused. Vecron's face turned pale. "This can't be possible," he whispered. Ethan's cuffs flickered from the shock of the blast. He pulled free and rushed toward the Empress. "Get down," he shouted. Plasma bolts filled the air. Ethan grabbed a fallen guard's shield and placed himself in front of Lysera again. The blue barrier sparked as fire hit it again and again. Lysera felt the heat behind the shield. "You are still protecting me," she said. "Always," he answered. The guards tried to regroup, but the assassins were many. One of them shouted, "Take the Empress alive." Ethan fired back with a guard's rifle, covering the Empress while she moved toward the exit. Through the smoke, he saw something glowing near the far wall, a detonator. Without thinking, he ran toward it, tackled it aside, and used his shield to block the explosion. The blast threw him against the wall, but he stood up again, coughing. Reinforcements finally arrived, and the assassins retreated once more. When the smoke cleared, Ethan stood in the middle of the ruined hall. His armor scorched, but his eyes sharp. Lysera looked around at her nobles hiding behind pillars, too afraid to move. Her gaze stopped on Vecron, whose face was pale with guilt. She walked forward slowly. "You see, Lord Vecron," she said. "The human was in chains when the attack began. Yet he saved me again. What does that say about your claims?" Vecron tried to speak, but no words came out. The Empress turned to her guards. "Release him," she ordered. "Ethan Cole is under my protection. From this moment, anyone who accuses him accuses me as well." The guards obeyed. Ethan stood free once more, breathing heavily. Lysera looked at him with calm pride. "You have saved my life 3 times, she said. "And now I know who truly stands beside me." Ethan bowed his head slightly. "I only did what was right, Your Majesty." But deep inside, both of them knew this was not the end. Someone had planned these attacks carefully. The true battle for the Empire had only just begun. The night sky of Surath burned red as explosions lit the horizon. The once beautiful city of the Empress now looked like a battlefield of broken towers and fire. The alien Empire's flagships circled above, and thunderous sounds of plasma blasts echoed through the air. For the first time in centuries, the palace walls trembled under enemy fire. Empress Altira stood on the palace balcony, her golden eyes filled with sadness. The city she had built with peace and wisdom was now under attack by her own nobles, who had turned against her. Behind her, Commander Train, the last loyal officer, reported grimly, "Your Majesty, the east walls have fallen. The traitors are inside the inner city." She turned to him calmly. "And the guards?" Train hesitated before answering. "Most of them have deserted, my Empress. Only a few remain." Altira nodded slowly, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Then we fight with those who remain. I will not abandon my people." In the middle of this storm stood one man, who was not from this world, Captain Ryan Hale of Earth. He was wearing damaged armor and holding a human-made rail rifle that still glowed from use. His body bore the signs of battle, but his eyes were focused and sharp. When Train tried to convince him to leave, Ryan only said, "I don't run while others stay." Now, as the palace shook again, the human took position beside the Empress. The other guards looked uncertain, frightened. But when they saw the calm and courage in Ryan's eyes, some of them straightened their backs and gripped their weapons tighter. From the courtyard below, a massive blast door cracked open, and dozens of enemy soldiers in black armor poured in. They were led by Lord Varun, one of the Empress's former allies who had betrayed her for power. "Capture her alive," Varun ordered coldly. "The council wants her as a symbol of surrender." Ryan stood between the attackers and the Empress. "You'll have to go through me first," he said in a firm voice. The aliens laughed at the sight of one human standing against them. But then Ryan fired. The rail rifle's shot cut through the air with a thunderous crack, taking down the first 2 soldiers instantly. The courtyard turned silent for a moment, then erupted in chaos. The guards who had stayed with the Empress followed Ryan's lead. They fired from behind pillars and barricades, shouting their loyalty to their ruler. The air was filled with light and smoke, and Ryan moved like a storm among them. He used cover, fired precisely, and shouted orders that made even the alien guards fight better. When one of the palace defenders fell, Ryan grabbed his weapon and kept shooting. His voice carried over the roar of battle. "Hold the line. For your Empress." Hearing that, something awakened inside the frightened soldiers. The sight of a human, a being from another world, defending their Empress without hesitation inspired them. The line that was breaking began to hold again. Lord Vroon shouted angrily, "Kill the human." Several of his elite guards charged forward, swinging plasma blades. Ryan dodged the first strike, countered with a rifle but to the face, and then rolled aside to fire again. His armor was scorched, but he refused to back down. Altira watched in awe. She had seen many warriors in her time, but none like this man. Humans, she realized, fought not for reward or command. They fought for what they believed was right. Suddenly, a grenade flew through the air toward her. Without thinking, Ryan jumped in front of her, pushing her down and covering her with his body as the blast went off nearby. The shockwave threw them both across the balcony. Dust filled the air, and the rail rifle clattered to the ground. Ryan groaned, struggling to stand. Still alive, he muttered. The Empress looked at him with wide eyes. "You shielded me again," she whispered. "Guess that's my job now," he said, giving her a tired smile. Before they could speak further, another explosion shook the floor. The inner doors burst open, and Vroon himself entered, holding a glowing blade. His armor gleamed, and his face was twisted with pride. "It's over, Altira," he said. "Your people have abandoned you. Even your guards ran. Only this human fool stands between you and your end." Ryan raised his rifle again, but it was out of power. He tossed it aside and picked up a fallen sword from the ground. "Then I'll make sure I'm the last fool you ever face," he said. Vroon sneered and rushed forward. The clash between human steel and alien energy filled the throne room with sparks. Ryan fought with quick, powerful movements, using his strength and instincts. Vroon was skilled, but Ryan's determination burned brighter. Every swing carried not just skill but purpose, to protect someone who had lost everything. The Empress watched the duel, her heart pounding. The sight of Ryan standing alone against her traitor made her realize something deeper. Humanity's courage was not just legend. It was real, alive, and now it was fighting for her. The fight lasted long minutes. Both combatants were bleeding and exhausted. Finally, Ryan saw an opening. He twisted aside, blocked Vroon's strike, and slammed his sword hilt into the alien's chest. Knocking him down, Ryan stood over him and said quietly, "You wanted power, but you forgot what it means to stand for something." Vroon tried to rise, but Ryan struck once more. Disabling him completely, the palace fell silent. The remaining enemy soldiers saw their leader fall and began to retreat. The loyal guards cheered weakly, barely believing what had happened. Ryan dropped the sword and leaned against a pillar, breathing heavily. The Empress walked toward him, her golden robe torn, her crown dimmed by dust and smoke. "You saved me again," she said softly. Ryan smiled faintly. "Guess it's becoming a habit. You risked everything for me, even when my own guards ran away," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Why?" Ryan looked at her seriously. "Because you didn't deserve to die for their mistakes. Someone had to stand between you and the fire." The Empress lowered her gaze, emotion filling her eyes. "Then from this moment, you are no longer just a protector. You are a symbol, a reminder of what courage truly means." Outside, the first light of dawn began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The smoke still rose from the city, but for the first time, hope began to return. The people would soon learn that their Empress still lived, because one human refused to let her fall. Ryan turned to the balcony, watching the sunrise. His armor was cracked, and his body was tired, but he felt something strong inside, pride. The Empress stood beside him, her voice quiet. "Captain Hale, today you did more than save me. You gave my people a reason to believe again." He looked at her and nodded. "Then let's make sure this fight wasn't for nothing, and together." As the sun rose over the smoking city, the human and the Empress stood side by side, ready to rebuild what had been broken. The galaxy would remember this day, the day when a human shielded an alien Empress and changed her world forever. The smoke of battle still floated over the city of Sarath. The towers were broken, the streets were covered in dust, and the sky was dark with the smell of burned metal. But inside the palace, there was peace again. The Empress of the Sarati Empire still lived, and the man who had saved her was a human from Earth. Captain Ryan hailed out as the sun rose over the mountains. Its golden light touched the ruins of the palace. Soldiers who had fled during the battle now returned, ashamed and silent. They saw the human standing beside the Empress, his armor broken, his face tired but proud. To them, it looked like the return of hope itself. Empress Altira walked slowly through the palace courtyard. Her gown was torn, her crown cracked, but her spirit was strong. Ryan followed her closely, keeping watch over every shadow. The guards who had run away bowed deeply as she passed. One of them whispered, "Forgive us, my Empress. We lost courage." Altira stopped and looked at him with calm eyes. "Courage can fall, but honor can still rise again," she said. "Stand and rebuild what was lost." Ryan saw how her words gave strength to the soldiers again. He admired her. She carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders and still spoke with kindness. The Empress turned to Ryan. "Come with me," she said. They walked through the ruined halls toward the throne room. The great doors were broken, and the banners were torn. In the middle of the room lay the body of Lord Vroon, the traitor who had tried to take her crown. His rebellion was crushed, but his actions had left scars across the empire. Altira looked at Ryan. "You should not have been part of this war," she said softly. "You could have left, yet you stayed." Ryan shook his head. "Leaving wasn't an option. You were in danger, and I was the only one left to help. On Earth, we don't turn our backs when someone's counting on us." The Empress gave a small smile. "Perhaps that is what makes humans so different. You fight for reasons beyond duty." Ryan nodded. "Sometimes it's not about orders. It's about what's right." The Empress stepped toward the throne and stood in front of it. "Then help me make things right," she said. "The empire is broken. My council is divided. My people are afraid. If I rebuild it alone, I will fail again." Ryan hesitated. "I'm just a soldier. I don't belong in royal courts." Altira looked at him gently. "You belong where honor is needed. And right now, that is here." Later that day, the Empress called for the remaining council members together in the palace courtyard. There were whispers among them when they saw the humans standing at her side. Some were grateful, others uncertain. Humans were still new to the galaxy, still seen as unpredictable and dangerous by many alien races. When silence fell, Altira spoke. Her voice was calm but powerful. "My people, we have seen betrayal and fear, but we have also seen something greater, courage that came from beyond our stars. When my guards fled, a human stood between me and death. He fought not for crown, not for gold, but for honor. And today, because of him, I still stand before you." The crowd was silent. The wind carried her words through the ruins. Then slowly, they began to bow. The soldiers, the council, and the people gathered outside the palace walls all lowered their heads in respect, not just for their Empress, but for the human beside her. Ryan felt uncomfortable at first. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, but he also understood that this moment wasn't about him alone. It was about what humans could mean to the galaxy, what courage could mean, no matter where it came from. When the ceremony ended, the Empress turned to him. "You have given me a gift I can never repay," she said quietly. Ryan smiled a little. "You don't have to repay me. Just promise you'll leave them with the same courage they saw in you today." She nodded. "I promise." Days passed. The fires in the city were put out, and rebuilding began. Ryan helped organize rescue teams and used his knowledge of human engineering to rebuild communication systems. He worked beside the alien soldiers and workers as if they were his own crew. They watched him with admiration and sometimes disbelief. This human never rested, never complained, and always smiled when others were tired. One night, as the new lights of the city shone again, Ryan stood on the palace balcony. The stars above were brighter now. The Empress joined him quietly. "It is peaceful tonight," she said. Ryan nodded. "It's good to see your city alive again." She looked at him, her golden eyes soft. "You've done more than save it. You've changed it. My people now speak of you as the shield of Sarath. They tell your story in every home." Ryan laughed softly. "That's a bit much. I just did what needed to be done." "To them, it was more than that," she said. "They see hope in your actions. For so long, they believed courage belonged only to the strong and powerful. But you showed them that true strength lies in heart and will." He looked at her. "And you showed them what mercy looks like. That's why they follow you." The Empress smiled faintly. "Perhaps we both taught them something." As they watched the city lights, an alien messenger hurried toward them. He bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, a message from the outer colonies. They have sworn loyalty again and offer support to rebuild the empire." The Empress nodded. "Tell them we accept, and thank them for their faith." When the messenger left, she turned to Ryan again. "You see, hope spreads faster than fear." He looked out at the horizon. Maybe this galaxy needed a reminder that courage can come from anywhere, from any world. She added softly. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The wind carried the sound of construction and laughter from below. The city that had burned now lived again, brighter than before. Then the Empress said, "What will you do now, Captain Hale? Will you return to your world?" Ryan looked at the stars. "I don't know. Maybe one day. But right now, I think my place is here, helping you finish what we started." The Empress smiled warmly. "Then Sarath welcomes you as one of its own." The next morning, banners of both worlds were raised over the rebuilt palace, the emblem of the Sarati Empire and the flag of Earth's expedition corps. Together they fluttered in the wind, a symbol of unity between two very different races. Rumors spread across the galaxy about the human who had saved an alien Empress. Some said he was a legend. Others said he was a warning, proof that humanity was not to be underestimated. But for those who truly knew the story, he was a hero who had stood alone when everyone else had run. Ryan never asked for glory or title. He worked beside the people every day, rebuilding walls, training new guards, and teaching them the tactics that had saved the palace. The Empress often joined him, speaking with citizens and sharing food with workers. Together they turned fear into strength and sorrow into purpose. One evening, as the new moon rose, Ryan looked at the city one last time before heading to rest. Altira approached and said, "You have done enough to earn rest, Captain." He smiled. "I'll rest when the stars stop shining." She laughed softly. "Then you will never rest?" "Maybe that's fine," he said. "Because as long as they shine, we'll know we still have something to protect." The Empress nodded, her heart warm. "Then let this be the new age of Sarath, born from courage, guarded by humanity, and built on honor and under the twin moons of the alien world." The human and the Empress stood side by side, watching a galaxy change forever. The day she had been abandoned by her guards was the day she found something far greater, a friend, a protector, in the spirit of humanity that refused to yield. The galaxy would remember his name, not as a conqueror, but as the human who shielded an Empress without hesitation and lit the path for a new dawn.